gentlemen, it is a Thursday edition of East Coast Bias. The boys are back by popular demand. The last Thursday here in the month of June. The NBA draft is come and gone, at least round number one. Hallelujah for that. Probably the most blasé NBA draft build-up, hype, anticipation that we've had in a long, long time. That said, we have some stuff to discuss. Let's welcome in Joe House, Raheem Palmer, yours truly, JJ John Jastrzemski, and I promise I am not going to be smiling, fellas, this entire show because of what's going on with my New York Knicks, who we will get to in a little bit regarding Mikal Bridges and the return of OG Anunoby, and just puts me in such a pleasant mood here on this fine Thursday. But guys, let's do some draft right out of the gate here. House, in years past, I feel like we have given out a lot of draft props. And because of the fact that the NBA decided to do the draft on a Wednesday and start the first round as opposed to a Thursday, we didn't have the opportunity to maybe give as many as we would have. That said, though, House, I got to be honest. I had such a bad read, and I had absolutely no feel for how this draft was going to play out with the amount of foreign guys you had at the top. Yeah, I thought Shepard would go high. Yeah, I thought Kessel would go high. And I thought Edey would go higher than expected. Didn't think he'd go as high as he did. But I kind of found myself in a position where I didn't want to get involved with anything come draft day just because this was such a weird and bizarre NBA draft.
It's such a great point, JJ. We protected ourselves. The NBA and ESPN protected us and all of the great fans of the show and listeners and viewers on FanDuel TV, because my own self, I think I've got maybe 4 bets in on this draft. And, 2 or 3 of them were just like wild speculation kind of stuff. Like I bet Kyle Filipowski to get drafted inside the first 20 at 9-1 odds. Cause I was like, well, you know what? Duke has a tradition. Their guys go, he's a household name. Somebody might want, one of those teams might want somebody that feels like a vet, but for the most part, this was a stay away draft in terms of a betting card. The Edey bet did get. I participated in that. I had him inside top 15 and top 17, and there was some good arguments for him to be inside the top 10. That hit. I know some of the folks, the Action Network had that play. But, man, this was one to just sort of sit back because in many respects, we were learning some names tonight. Like, Dylan Jones.
That's an understatement, House. That's an understatement, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, and hearing the correct pronunciation that none of us are going to be able to repeat. The kid who went first, Zachary Richet, he said it so quickly and beautifully with his French accent. I can't possibly repeat it, but Dream, I mean, this was one just sort of take back, take a seat, try and make some sense out of what happened.
Well, I think if you're a professional gambler, I mean, the type of guy who lays heavy juice, you made out pretty well because the number 1 pick, Zachary Richet, he was minus 400 to be the number 1 pick. And obviously that came in. And then obviously we knew Alex Sarr, he did not work out for the Atlanta Hawks, and the Washington Wizards were all over him. He was minus 750 to get the number 2 pick. And that came in as well. So if you're the type of guy who lays heavy juice, you made out like a bandit. But also some of the long shots came in. You look at the fact that Zach Edey, he came in at number 9. And, a couple of minutes before that, it looked like the Memphis Grizzlies were trying to trade up to number 6 to get that pick in order to get Klingon. And obviously that didn't work out. So they end up getting Zach Edey. But you look at a guy like Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky. This is a guy who he landed in the top 10 at number 8. So I was shocked to see that the Minnesota Timberwolves, they traded for him from the Spurs, and they got an extra score off their bench. They also drafted a guy in Terrence Shannon Jr. From Illinois. So they're beefing up the scoring off that bench. A lot of surprises in this draft. I mean, just really interesting night.
Well, I want to get to a couple of takeaways, fellas, that I had from the first round. The first being Stephon Castle could not have ended up in a better situation. And I was kind of wavering. Is it going to be Castle at 3? Is it going to be Reed Sheppard at 3? Well, Reed Sheppard ends up going to the Houston Rockets. And now Castle ends up with Popovich. He goes from Hurley to Popovich. He gets to play alongside Wembanyama. They are going to bring it defensively because Castle is a tremendous defensive player. I love that fit. And listen, I think Kennett to the Lakers is a fantastic pick. I mean, the Lakers are in dire need of shooting. I love Dalton Kennett at Tennessee. I mean, he's the only reason that Rick Barnes' team actually made it to the round of 8 when they never seemed to make it to the round of 8. And then there's Dillingham, who gets to go to this win-now situation and can maybe be somebody for Minnesota that gives you some instant offense that maybe was needed in that series that we saw against the Dallas Mavericks. So, those are a couple of storylines that kind of stood out to me. It was Castle going to the Spurs, which I adored, Kennett going to the Lakers, and then Dillingham trade up with Minnesota. If there was a storyline that you really fell in love with this draft, is there one that stood out?
Well, it was the 90 seconds that the Spurs had both Castle and Dillingham. The possibility that they would be building around Wemby with a dynamic scorer, possibly the most dynamic scorer in the draft, as well as this lockdown perimeter defender. I say, hey, look at the Spurs. But they have something up their sleeve. You know, we're still digesting this. The show's being taped right after the draft. So we'll see in the fullness of time what the game plan is for the Spurs, why an investment in Dillingham didn't make sense. But kudos to Minnesota, because, man, does that make a ton of sense for both him and for them. So the only sort of knock on Dillingham was this maturity sort of question that was out there. He's going to grow up because Chris Finch has no tolerance for any kind of foolishness. So we were going to find out whether or not he's NBA caliber in terms of his maturity level and ready to contribute. The other player that caught my eye, I feel like Miami might have done it again.
They got I was thinking that too.
I mean, they hit exactly in a place of need in terms of a backup, athletic, big man. They extended, the news broke that they extended Bam, and then they go into the draft and they get a perfect compliment for Bam. He's going to be raw offensively, but he's so light on his feet that you're going to see a lot of put back kind of offensive rebounding kind of things out of this kid from Indiana, Mr. Ware. I'm not going to try and say his first name because I'll botch it. You still have to learn the names. But that was one. I was like, man, Miami, they did it again.
I got to give some props to Danny Ainge because we know that he built that championship roster. I mean, obviously, Brad Stevens, he finished the job, but Danny Ainge, he drafted Jason Tatum. He drafted Jaylen Brown. Well, in this draft, he got Cody Williams, 6'7" wing out of Colorado, the brother of Jalen Williams. I think he got a steal there.
He's a baller, Raheem. Watching him in Colorado down a stretch and then watching him in the NCAA tournament, I fell in love with that team. They were really entertaining to watch. Really entertaining.
And I think he follows suit on the Jaylen Brown and the Jason Tatum picks, and he got another wing. But then also when you add to that, he also got a guy out of USC. He's not Brodie James, but he is Isaiah Collier, and I think he could be a strong point guard for the Utah Jazz. So Danny Ainge has proven that he is one of the best GMs in the league. So you can't sleep on him at all.
And that's one of the things that, to me, with the draft, and we were talking about this right before we started the show, is so much fun. And listen, you may watch a variety of college basketball. You might watch a lot of it from November all the way until March. You might not watch a lot until after football season. Maybe you're diving in a little in February and you're a, conference tournament March Madness warrior. I think many people who are watching and listening to the show fit that description. But Raheem, I think that's the element that was missing at the top of this draft because you had the international guys going. And listen, we have no idea what kind of players these international guys are going to be. I'm not going to sit there and tell you, hey, I know, I feel great about this. I don't have the slightest clue. But Dalton Kennett is somebody I loved at Tennessee. I feel like I am invested in his NBA career. There's something to that idea, right? Even if you saw him for a smidge, hot second, maybe a week or two, allows people to really fall in love with these guys coming into the association.
Yeah, and then, along with that, for a couple of years, you had the G League Ignite guys, And it was just like almost for like a year, they fell off the face of the earth. Like, so, I mean, fortunately, this is the last year with the G League Ignite. But, I mean, the foreign players are here to stay. And it feels like more and more foreign players are entering the draft every single year. I mean, the French basically took over.
They sure
I mean, they
did,
had
House. Get ready, man.
French Revolution.
French flag for you at Wizards games moving forward.
Did we get 5 Frenchmen or 6? Well, I mean, the number could have been 5.5 and over under on how many birthplace of origin France or France nationality. And it was somewhere up in that range. But the interesting point is, I think this is the last year, both for the G League Ignite, but also sort of the COVID impact where you have college kids who got an extended run. It was an eye-opener when, I saw the Deni Avdija news for the Wizards. The Wizards are really tearing the whole thing down to the studs. We want all of our players to be on rookie contracts, and by hook or by crook, we're going to be that where by next year. But Deni Avdija is younger than Dalton Knecht. Dalton Knecht is older than, right. So think about that. Deni Avdija is in his 4th year in the NBA, and Dalton Knecht is just coming into the league. And I think, honestly, that contributed to Dalton Knecht's slide all the way down to 17, because for much of this college basketball season, he was well inside the top 10, and he was being thought of as a top 5 player.
Boys, we got a lot cooking in this edition of East Coast Bias. My New York Knicks running it back with OG Anunoby. I'm happy about that. I'm just as happy about the fact that Mikal Bridges is joining the Villanova boys. And the Knicks, second in the odds to win the title in the NBA. Am I living in that world? Is that reality, fantasy, all of the above? We'll get to that and what to look for as NBA free agency kicks off this weekend. What the boys are keeping an eye on. That's coming up next.